Good morning, everybody. It is Courtney with the Kitchen Garden, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about soil reports. So when you send your soil sample in and you get it back, how do you know what it means? Okay, what do all these little bars mean? What is a lime recommendation, and what are different fertilizers, and how do you know which one to use based on the soil sample that you got back from your state testing lab or whatever facility you sent it to? See all back there. So anyways, it is early March, and what's left of our winter garden is in the raised bed, and so I'm about to clean it out, but I did send soil samples off for both my raised beds. I took a collection of samples from that, and also for my in-ground bed. So we're going to start with the in-ground bed because those results were the most interesting. So let's go check it out. Hey guys, so we're at the in-ground garden, which is here. You can see just a little row garden that we actually added amidst the pandemic last year because, well, we had extra time on our hands and we have a tiller. So this year was the first year that I sampled it because we started the in-ground garden in April of last year. So when I got the results back for the in-ground garden, you can see that your soil test will give you a couple of bits of information. It'll talk about the pH of your soil, which is the alkalinity or the acidity of the soil. And our state, the state of North Carolina, based on whatever you said, I told them that this row garden was for vegetables. So what they did is they give me a range of what is an optimal pH. Okay, so for growing vegetables, ideally you want a pH between 6.2 and 6.7. And you can get home soil tests that will test the soil alkalinity, and it should have on the back of the soil test or the tester what are the optimal ranges for different types of plants. So like blueberries, azaleas, those type of things, like a more acidic soil. But for vegetables, this is the range that's ideal. Okay, so what it is showing me is that, yes, the soil in my my row garden is in the optimal range, and that's great. So it also says above lime recommendations. Since my pH is good, I'm not going to add any kind of garden lime to it. It's not necessary. Okay. So the other thing that your soil test should tell you is about the phosphorus and the potassium levels of your soil. Now this is important because these are things that are included in fertilizers, and so you need to know what type of fertilizer is going to work best for your soil. Now what it won't tell you is the nitrogen levels in your soil, because these vary pretty greatly and can fluctuate pretty quickly. So but what I have found in this particular bed, and actually the side bed, so I got my soil samples together based on where the beds were. So this bed alone, I took a few samples from around it. That was one soil sample. I have 3 raised beds along the side yard, and so I took samples from each of those beds and combined those as one sample. And then my center vegetable garden area where I have the larger raised beds, that was a 3rd sample. So that is how I separated mine out, which helps me to know, because honestly, different areas had different needs. So this particular bed, you can see, had phosphorus levels that were through the roof, okay, but needed more potassium. So what the soil report tells me here is that I need to use a fertilizer that has nitrogen in it, no phosphorus, okay, or phosphate is what's actually in the fertilizer, but then does have some potassium. So I'm looking for a fertilizer with that 0 in the middle, because that's what those 3 numbers are. You see them at the store, 10, 10, 10. So what I've decided to use in this bed, since I need no phosphate, is going to be blood meal. So that's going to be my fertilizer of choice this year, and we'll see how it goes, because I did have issues in this garden last year with a lot of I had planted some squash, some Georgia mountain squash, more a candy roaster is what it was called, and they just didn't do well, and so I wasn't sure why. My okra did okay, so I also need to consider plants that would do well in soil that has high phosphorus, because that's what I have right now. So this year I am going to focus more on beans, which will put some nitrogen back in the soil and hopefully help to balance things out. So that's my row garden, and reading the soil report and what I will do for it. Now let's take a peek at my raised bed, my big raised beds, because honestly the soil at the side of the yard was pretty much the same as this soil, which was interesting because most of this is a much more native to our backyard soil. I didn't bring a lot in to supplement, whereas my raised beds on the side are completely filled with a non-native soil that I had brought in from a local company. So when I say non-native, I don't mean like out of state. I just mean it didn't come from our backyard. So let's take a peek at our large bed, which was a hugelkultur bed, so sticks in the bottom, some straw, some sod actually upside down, and then we have slowly over the years like layered more soil on top. So let's take a peek at the soil report for that. Okay guys, so we're here at the big raised bed, and you can see what I've got left of kale and arugula, which I'm allowing to bloom because it's bringing the bees. I've actually seen a lot of bees out just in the last week, and so I want to leave them there for as long as I can to kind of give the bees a food source, because the dandelions are out right now too, which is great food source for the bees. But back to the topic at hand, which is the soil report. So again, the two things that the soil report really gives me good feedback on, again, is my soil alkalinity or acidity. In this case, my soil is a bit alkaline. It's not in the optimal range for planting vegetables, so I will want to add some garden lime to my soil this year. And my phosphorus and potassium readings are both below optimal. So my soil report tells me that I can use just a standard 10-10-10 fertilizer. I'll probably mix some of that in with, I'm gonna top off this bed with a little bit of soil, probably add some of that fertilizer in. I do prefer like an organic, I love Espoma's Garten Tone fertilizer. It's typically what I use. And so I just love that a soil report will tell you exactly what your garden is going to need to be successful, because if you start with good soil, then your plants tend to thrive. It's a healthier environment for them. So always consider getting a soil report before you begin planting in the spring. And honestly, getting it in the fall will give you also a bit more time to add some compost to your garden beds and to keep them covered in the winter if you're not going to use cover crops or plant a winter garden. So I highly recommend getting a soil report done. And while your states may look a little different than mine, they should generally have the same information. And if you're feeling a little extra and you just happen to really love what exactly is in your soil, our state at least gives you a little bit of a mineral breakdown as well for your soil. I don't pay as much attention to this because I simply don't have time to do anything else to the soil but to get it ready for this season's plantings. But I hope you found this helpful. If you have questions about soil reports, check down below. And most importantly, check out your cooperative extension, because that's typically, most states have them. That's typically who you would do your soil test through, and they're free a majority of the year, at least they are for us in North Carolina. In the spring, the late winter, early spring, they do charge, I think, $4 per sample. So it's not gonna break the bank. But if you don't want to pay for it at all, check with your extension office to see if you can do your test in the fall. So hope you guys are having a great day. Have a wonderful gardening season, and I'll talk to you soon.